the surface of the mire, and then you get common problems with that. So it's, you know, it's getting the water table at the right level to get the right vegetation back.
I'm Nick Robinson from New York. I teach environmental law. And it seems to me we have to take several entry points. New York State, I wrote the legislation that preserved the freshwater wetlands across the state and therefore stopped the development of any peat exploitation of wetlands, but not because of peat or because of sequestering the carbon. It was because at that time we just wanted to save the wetlands as a biome. But it worked. And contrary to what happened in New York, in all the other states and the federal government, there is no protection effectively for wetlands. Massachusetts, New York, and Connecticut are the only states that have peat protected effectively. Much of Canada and much of the rest of North America continues to exploit peat or convert peatlands and any wetlands to commercial use, which destroys the wetland and the peat. And only through vehicles like Ramsar, it seems to me, or through using the protected area approach, can we educate the land managers in much of North America on the need to do peat preservation and restoration. So I think it's a big barrier because literally no one is talking that way in North America. It's still, why should we not destroy wetlands is the presumption for much of the economic development in that continent. I also work a lot with the University of Singapore, National University of Singapore, and its Asia Pacific Center for Environmental Law, in collaborating across Southeast Asia and particularly Indonesia to try to come up with ways to manage the application of the environmental laws there. And the peat isn't even mapped. I mean, there's no regulatory system. It's against the law to convert to these plantations, but until we create the entire chain of regulation and law enforcement, it's a purely economic and often not informal mechanism that is destroying the peat. And Norway has given quite a lot of money to Indonesia to try to build up the rule of law and the stabilization for government management of peat. But it takes a long time to change a legal culture which has allowed itself to become less efficient and sometimes corrupt. And in this race against time, I think one of the biggest barriers is how to quickly advance management systems, jumping over these stages where it doesn't exist or where there's an opposition to it. The European Union is more fortunate, it seems to me, than much of the world in having a management structure and a culture of addressing it and even wanting to create these economic incentives for finding money to invest in peat as a sequestering force. Because even if you had that money, it would be very hard to get it going in Southeast Asia or North America. I'm not as familiar with other parts of the world.
I'll get on to my response to some of that.
So there's a chap at the back there.
Just
Hi, I'm John Benson from Sydney, Australia. I'm an ecologist. In Australia, we have environmental laws, going on from the last comment, that actually protect peats and mires, both federally and within states, by endangered ecological community listings that cover all tenures of land, including private land. And so pretty well all the peatlands in Australia are now under those laws and theoretically protected. They can't be dragged and cleared. That doesn't mean there isn't degradation happening. It doesn't mean that wildfire and climate change is not a threatening process. It is. So there are other ways legally around it and are being implemented in other parts of the world. But those laws are some of the most advanced on the planet. So yeah, you might want to look at them.
Okay, so there's clearly tremendous expertise in the room, so that third point there, an advice request, maybe it should be to the audience rather than me and Clifton, or both. So is there any other questions or points? Jane?
Hi, yes, thanks. And I'm sorry I came in late, so I didn't hear the presentations. But I'm Jane Smart, Global Director for the the biodiversity conservation group in IUCN, and it does strike me that we need to raise awareness. Thanks very much. We need to raise awareness of this issue across the IUCN family. So there's a lot of technical information which perhaps needs to be brought together within an IUCN context, perhaps. I mean, there's a lot on the back there, but just from the discussion I'm hearing, you're all sharing experiences, and sometimes you have solutions to the problems, right? So we could bring some of that together. But where is the home in the commissions, I guess? Is there any peatland conservation work going on in any of the commissions? Now, not really in SSC. I'm the focal point for the Species Survival Commission. Not particularly. So is there any going on in the Commission for Ecosystem Management? Much at all? Does anybody know? Because I had a chat with the chair of that commission the other night, and I asked him this question, and at one point I tried to put our mutual friend Richard Lindsay in touch with the chair of that commission. And I think we need to make more effort to make sure that this gets going, because I think that would be the natural home for this work, and then we can link to protected areas. As Nick Robinson said, there's the whole legal side of this to bring together as well, and bring your experiences from all around the world. So find a home in the commissions, and then we can start to say it's not just about forests, it's about peat as well in relation to climate change, right? So that's what we need to say. But some of the policy people might say at the moment it's too early, it's too difficult for forests, so we can't move on peatlands. But actually, I would start to say let's raise awareness of how important the peat issue is in relation to this agenda, and gradually surface the issues through the commissions and create a bit of a head of steam. So that would be my thought on how we move this forward a bit.
Can I just respond very quickly to the question on whether we're engaging with the CEN? Yes is the answer, but we're very early stage at the moment. So what we're hoping actually is to, rather than have this as a standalone program in the UK, is to get it adopted more widely through the CEN and get them to actually take some of the actions forward.
Well, let me know if I can help, okay?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Taking this up, I've been at the WCPA members meeting, a steering committee meeting yesterday and the day before, and they are right now in the process of planning the objective, purpose and pathways to the World Parks Congress in November 2014 in Australia. And I think this could be a good opportunity to feed in the issue of peatland protection into WCPA work. So I recommend you take it up and have a look at that too. Having the mic right now, I would also like to come up with this that what's really on my mind is many times we do have a barrier to action because we cannot get really into the agriculture who's kind of competing for use on these issues. And I don't know if you have any advice or any suggestions how to combine kind of demands for agriculture, for food production, and the demand, let's say, for peatland conservation on the other hand. So I'd be interested in your or anyone else's suggestions on that.
I think Clifton's going to cover a little bit of that in his talk, but maybe we'll pick up on that one. We can have a further talk in a second. Or maybe we'll pick up on that one at the end as well. Just to say, you've all been handed one of these sheets, which is the suggestions for actions going forward. So what we'd like to do at the end is we've got six actions, draft actions. We'd actually like to try and prioritise that down a bit more, and if we can come up with the biggest priority that we should be focusing on in the next few years, but also we'd like to the top three as well to take forward into our discussions with CEN, for example. So the first one is promoting the 10 strategic actions in the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN Peatland Guidance for Climate Change Mitigation, which is in draft form at the moment.
This report, which is an FAO group now looking at peatland and not answering but addressing the questions about how do we continue to provide reduction on land that is a peat bog and keep it as a functioning peatland. And the word paludiculture is now being bandied around. But all the sort of work on that is being gathered through the FAO work. This is their consultation document. A copy's on the memory stick that we're giving you, and they'll be launching soon their revised version of this, and it will pick up on a lot of this aspect of how do we bring production and peatlands together.
It's worth saying because of the weight limit on the aeroplane, we weren't able to bring lots of printed reports, but that's why we brought the memory stick. So all those reports are on the memory stick, so you should be able to access those. The second point was international action to demonstrate and share good practice in managing peatlands as a prime example of nature providing multiple benefits to society. Third one was make available internationally methods and technologies for re-wetting peatlands. So that's the technical guidance action point, which has come up a couple of times, so that might be one for priority, or we'll see what people say. The fourth one, promote peatlands as promote peatlands as a prime example of nature delivering multiple benefits to the business and private funding sector. So that's about mobilising resources, but also getting businesses involved. The fifth one, national monitoring and reporting of peatland action, progress against biodiversity, climate change and wetland objectives should be undertaken in all peatland countries to allow an international overview to be obtained. So that was about monitoring and reporting, standardisation of monitoring and reporting. And then the last one, international sharing of scientific methods and results in monitoring and quantifying ecosystem service benefits of peatlands, which is really about sharing the research findings from the various people that are working on the more technical aspects of peatlands throughout the world. So we've got 6 there. What we'll do, because we didn't have any blue tack, we'll put them, and then there's nobody sitting in the front row, so we'll put them on the chairs in the front row, and then give you a marker pen, and you can vote basically. Put your X in the on the one that you think is the most important at the end.
Or adjust if you've got any specific comments.
And please feel free to scribble. I would also suggest that if you can leave your business cards at the end, if you'd like to be added to the Soils and Organic Carbon Working Group, email group, which FIO are actually administering at the moment, which is very good, and we're working with them. So a lot of our material actually gets put up on that group. So with that, I think if you can kind of half read these priorities and half listen to Clifton. Multitask. Clifton's going to give us some an overview of some of the things that we've experienced through running the IUCN Peatland program over the last 3 years.
So the IUCN UK National Committee's Peatland programme started 3 years ago, basically trying to bring together all the effort that was going on. We had lots of scientific studies going on looking at peatland restoration. We had loads of projects going on around the country with people restoring bogs. We had various directives, EU directives requiring peatlands to be conserved. But we had no action really. We had a sort of disjointed feel. There was a conference 3 years ago where the scientists, the policymakers and the practitioners were all looking at each other going, we know this is really important, but why are we still not making progress? Why are we still questioning and arguing with each other about the right way to go forward? So the inquiry really was set up to try and bring together these different groups, the academics, the policymakers and the land managers, to find the consensus and try and get from that consensus some progress, address the hurdles that were stopping people delivering what was obviously a good thing. So we didn't start from the point of the inquiry, is this good for conservation and the planet? We started from the principle, how do we deliver what are clearly important objectives, and how do we work together across the different sectors to achieve that? And we started with the recognition that peatlands are important for biodiversity. We've got legal obligations and we've got various species and habitat obligations, and equally we've got now these emerging ecosystem service benefits. How can we deliver them what are they? Can we quantify them? And we were looking particularly at a UK context from that. Very similar point to what was just made earlier. Even in the UK, smallish country, we had never put together one map of the peatland soils until the inquiry started. The data was there, it had just never been brought together to present a map of UK peatland. The green areas being the shallower peat, less than a metre deep, the red areas being the deep peat, some of which can go up to 10 metres or more. So, first start, where is your peatland? Gives you an idea. These are pretty much the upland areas of the UK, and out there in the east is the low-lying fen peatlands under a very different land use type. And the next point of the exercise was, what are the threats? The upland peatlands have very different land use threats to the lowland peatlands. In the lowlands you tend to get arable farming, has drained the peatlands and planted arable crops on them. In the uplands we have combinations of different land uses that I'll explain in the next slide. But the upshot for the UK, nearly 10% of the land is covered in peat. The majority of it is blanket bog, which is a sphagnum-dominated deep peat system. For the UK, it was our largest area, if you like, of semi-natural habitat. These are wide open landscapes, which again, in a small country like the UK, these are places people can go to get away from city life, if you like. And nearly 3 billion tonnes of carbon stored in our peatlands. And just to put it in context, if we lost 5% of our carbon store from our peatlands, it would be equivalent to a year's worth of our total annual greenhouse gas emissions from all activities in the UK. The way we tried to bring the inquiry together, bearing in mind that what we're trying to do is bring these different groups from different sectors, different land uses and different functioning areas of government, NGO, business and academic world. We held 3 conferences over 3 years under the theme Investing in Peatlands. The first conference looking at climate change, the second, how do we deliver these benefits? Where are the grants, where are the finances available to restore and conserve peatlands? And then the final one, which we held last year, was just about demonstrating success. Where have we actually been restoring peatlands, but not just looking at where we've functionally delivered a restored or restorable peatland. What were the methods? How did we engage the farming community? How did we get them on site? How did we get the private business sector to pay? Looking at the lessons learned from that side, and that was last year's conference. And the booklet, Demonstrating Success, summarises that last topic. The way we ran the inquiry, we had over 300 participants from right across the different aspects of government, NGO, but very importantly the land managing community. In the UK, most of the peatlands are owned by private individuals, and that land is managed by people essentially looking to make some money, and inevitably they've over the centuries been trying to destroy the peatland, to drain it, in order to make what they thought was a profit. Inevitably they've failed. Most of these areas are now poor quality agriculture, poor quality forestry, and the land managers are looking at these peatlands as something still worthless and useless. So we brought them in and encouraged them to give evidence. What were the hurdles? What would they like to help them deliver healthy peatlands? Because we started to get across the point that a damaged peatland wasn't of any use to them. What were the hurdles to them helping us deliver a healthy peatland? It was money, there was advice, there was basic lack of understanding as to what would this peatland deliver for society and who would pay them as an individual for delivering that benefit. And then there was all the inevitable questions about techniques, what's the right method for my particular landscape or land use. And once we started to address those hurdles and identify them, it became much easier then to say, okay, but you agree peatlands need to be restored, it's just how we do it in a way that doesn't disadvantage you. And that was the key turning point. So we were able to then say to government, people do want to see the peatlands restored. They're starting to learn the lessons that damaged peatlands are no good for any of us. But the fundamental point is, how do we get the money from those who are benefiting? And in the UK scenario, it's society, because we're reducing climate change emissions. There's some direct beneficiaries, the water companies. If they have a healthy peat bog, they don't have to spend so much money treating the water. But none of the profit saving by that water company was going to the land managers. So the concept that a peatland is only valuable when turned into something else, just to rehearse back over history, and this applies across the world, generally we drained the peatlands to turn it into something that we could grow livestock on, or arable crops. We planted trees on it. In Scotland again, and parts of Europe, we burned the peatlands. In Scotland particularly, in northern England, it's for grouse moor production, for sport shooting, and to some extent there was burning to make the land better for sheep grazing. That damaged the very functioning plants of the peatland. And recently we've had, as we've heard, the wind farms, particularly the drainage and the tracks associated with the wind farms, causing the loss of water from the system. So that was how land managers made their money from any of these activities. The biodiversity, really important, but it wasn't drawing much money in. I say that guardedly. In parts of the UK,